Commander Lyra Vance didn't have time to process the congratulations. Her hands were still shaking from the unexpected transmission, the holographic warning blinking red in front of her like a heartbeat of doom. "Deadliest creatures in the galaxy," the message had said, almost casually as if someone was joking. But there was nothing funny about the fleet of monstrous vessels suddenly appearing on the edge of the Andros expanse. Vance gritted her teeth and activated the ship's sensors, scanning for weaknesses, for anything that could give humanity even the tiniest edge. The creatures, or the alien collective intelligence she would soon come to call the Nihilith, were unlike anything recorded in human history. Their ships were alive, pulsating with bioluminescent veins, shifting shape like predatory fish as if the universe itself had decided to craft monsters solely to challenge humanity. Intelligence reports suggested no civilization had survived an encounter with them. Entire sectors simply disappeared, leaving behind nothing but silence and the faint traces of radioactive dust. Vance's fleet, barely 20 ships strong, was humanity's first line of defense. Every human under her command knew that failure meant total annihilation, but Vance also knew something that no alien intelligence could predict. Humans adapt. Humans endure. Humans fight back when every logic suggests surrender. "Captain," her tactical officer Ree said, voice tight, "they're converging on us faster than any known propulsion system. We won't last long in a direct confrontation." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't fight them the way they expect. Divert all auxiliary power to the kinetic arrays and cloaking fields. Prepare the decoy drones. And send a transmission to the colonies. Anyone who can mobilize, mobilize now." A chorus of alarm klaxons rang across the bridge as the first of the Nihilith tendrils breached the outer detection perimeter. They moved like predatory shadows, but Lyra's mind was a whirlwind of possibilities, probabilities, and contingencies. She had studied every human military manual, every alien encounter report, every tactical simulation ever run by the UESF, and none of them prepared her for this. None could have. Humanity had always relied on ingenuity, on the unpredictable chaos of human creativity. A sudden burst of laughter echoed through the comms, soft but sharp. Lyra glanced at the display and froze. One of her engineers, barely out of training, had done something that made the impossible happen. He had rigged the decoy drones to mimic a full fleet formation, complete with heat signatures, electronic chatter, and artificial graviton pulses. The Nihilith, the monsters the galaxy whispered about in terror, were already reacting. "They think it's 100 ships," the engineer said, voice trembling but exhilarated. "Good. Let's make them think they've won." The battle unfolded like a symphony of chaos. Humans used unconventional tactics, launching microswarms of autonomous drones that hacked into the creatures' neural links, turning their own collective intelligence against them. Starfighters darted through bioorganic warships, exploiting weak points in the living metal, while AI-assisted artillery systems synchronized perfectly with human intuition. Every loss was costly, but each victory fueled an almost primal confidence. Humanity, underestimated for centuries, was rewriting the rules of engagement. Across the fleet, human soldiers whispered the same mantra, a simple phrase that no Nihilith algorithm could compute. "We adapt, we endure, we fight back when every logic suggests surrender." Their courage was infectious. Reports came in from remote colonies. Ships previously considered obsolete were being retrofitted. Civilian engineers were weaponizing cargo vessels, and every conceivable surface was converted into a fighting platform. The galaxy watched, stunned, as humans who were supposed to be insignificant, irrelevant, now dictated the tempo of a war no one expected them to survive. And yet, even as humanity scored the first stunning victories, Lyra Vance knew the true challenge had only begun. The Nihilith were not merely a race. They were a force of evolution, adapting to every tactic, learning from every mistake, mutating faster than any human mind could fully comprehend. The war would not be won with brute force alone. It would require ingenuity, courage, and the boundless unpredictability that defined humanity itself. Vance's hand hovered over the communication panel. She sent a single transmission, not to the fleet, not to the colonies, but to the heart of the human network scattered across the galaxy. If you are alive, we are counting on you. Humanity does not surrender. From the silence that followed, a ripple of action began, like a single note starting an orchestra of chaos and hope. Ships lit up across sectors, civilians became soldiers, and 1,000 secret human projects came online at once. Humanity's hidden power, once underestimated, was now a storm awakening in the dark. And as the first wave of the Nihilith broke against the human defenses, Lyra realized something profound. This war was never theirs to start, but by the gods of Earth, it was theirs to win.
The Nihilith recoiled at the first wave of coordinated resistance, their biovessels thrashing like wounded leviathans. Yet every small victory came at a cost. Ships were lost, entire squadrons obliterated in the blink of a pulse, and Lyra felt the weight of every life under her command. But human resilience proved relentless. Survivors adapted on the fly, patching hulls mid-battle, redirecting energy from non-essential systems to weapons and shields. Even in the chaos, humans were thinking faster, improvising smarter, and striking unpredictably. In one critical maneuver, Lyra ordered a daring flanking operation. Using a combination of cloaked stealth fighters and drone swarms, her team targeted the neural cores of the Nihilith flagship, attempting to sever the connection that coordinated their hive-like intelligence. The flagship's bioluminescent veins flared violently, almost as if in pain, and for a moment the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Across the fleet, human sensors detected a hesitation, tiny, almost imperceptible, but enough to change the tide of the engagement. Meanwhile, reports poured in from isolated colonies. Miners, engineers, and even former educators were converting civilian ships into improvised war machines, creating makeshift armadas that, despite their crude appearance, packed devastating firepower. Human ingenuity became a weapon as lethal as any plasma cannon or particle beam. Lyra could barely process it all. Entire fleets had risen from nowhere, coordinated through encrypted channels, sending messages like a whispered symphony across sectors. Humanity, underestimated and scattered, was coalescing into something terrifyingly efficient. As the battle escalated, the Nihilith adjusted. Their adaptive algorithms began predicting human maneuvers with alarming speed. One moment a human strike team would find a flaw, the next the creatures countered it almost instantaneously. It became a test not of firepower alone, but of mind, intuition, and courage. Lyra realized that victory would require more than tactics. It required humans to do what they did best, think beyond rules, embrace unpredictability, and challenge the very assumptions the Nihilith relied upon. On the bridge of the flagship Intrepid Dawn, Lyra scanned the battlefield, watching as her forces executed a series of maneuvers that bordered on improvisational genius. Fighter pilots executed complex loops that would have seemed suicidal to any algorithm, while drones infiltrated gaps in the enemy defenses, exploiting weak points no one had considered. The creatures adapted, but humans adapted faster, turning mistakes into opportunity. Every strike, every evasive maneuver was a conversation between two radically different intelligences, one predictable, one unpredictable, and one refusing to surrender. Deep within a remote sector, a team of human scientists triggered an audacious experiment, a pulse wave that interfaced with the Nihilith neural network, designed to create chaos within the hive mind. At first, nothing happened. Then, in a horrifyingly beautiful display, the Nihilith ships began moving erratically, their formations collapsing like sandcastles under a storm. Ships collided, tendrils flailed, and the once perfectly coordinated collective started fragmenting under the pressure of human unpredictability. Lyra seized the opportunity. She ordered concentrated strikes on the flagship's neural nodes, exploiting the temporary disarray. Explosions lit the void like fireworks, a deadly spectacle of chaos and brilliance. Her own ship shuddered under the recoil, systems screaming in protest, but the human spirit, unyielding and relentless, pressed forward. Even as victory appeared possible, Lyra knew the Nihilith were not defeated. They were learning. The longer the war dragged on, the more terrifying their adaptations became. Yet humanity refused to retreat, turning desperation into strategy, fear into creativity. Colonies that had once hidden in the shadows of the galaxy were now supplying the front lines, providing reinforcements, weapons, and ideas that the Nihilith could not anticipate. Amid the chaos, a human engineer on the front lines achieved what Lyra could only describe as audacious brilliance. Using salvaged alien tech from previous skirmishes, he created a device capable of sending a localized neurodisruptive pulse, effectively scrambling the control networks of smaller Nihilith vessels. The first test was a spectacle. Ships spun out of formation, firing blindly into the void, and for the first time in recorded history, the creatures hesitated. Humanity had turned the tide, not through overwhelming force, but through ingenuity, improvisation, and the irrepressible will to survive. Reports from the edge of the battlefield indicated another astonishing development. Rogue human squads, operating without orders, were coordinating attacks using signals so unpredictable the Nihilith could not decipher them. Entire ships began defecting from their formations, colliding into one another as human forces exploited the gaps. Lyra realized that this war was no longer about conventional tactics. It was about chaos itself, harnessed and directed by the unique brilliance of humanity. Through every loss, every near-fatal encounter, the human fleet grew stronger, smarter, more resilient. Pilots who had never flown in battle were improvising maneuvers that defied logic, while engineers converted scavenged technology into weapons that seemed miraculous. Across the galaxy, colonies that had once cowered in fear were now humming with activity, every citizen contributing in some form to the war effort. Lyra watched it unfold, a mixture of pride and awe gripping her heart. Humanity, the species the universe had underestimated for centuries, was fighting with a ferocity and intelligence no algorithm, no creature could predict. Even as the Nihilith began recalibrating, adapting faster than before, Lyra's fleet pressed on. Every strike was calculated, every move unpredictable, every sacrifice meaningful. She knew the war was far from over. The creatures had depths of power and intelligence humanity could scarcely comprehend. But one truth had become undeniable. Humans, when pushed to the edge, could do what no other species could. They could turn desperation into brilliance, fear into courage, and chaos into victory. Across the void, the first sparks of human-led counteroffensives ignited sectors that had once been considered lost. Entire fleets emerged from hidden colonies, armed and ready, transforming the battlefield into a tapestry of human ingenuity. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the tide turned, not by overwhelming numbers, but by audacious courage and the boundless creativity that defined humanity. Lyra clenched her fists on the bridge, her gaze unwavering as the Nihilith flagship faltered under relentless human assaults. The creatures adapted, evolved, and recalibrated, yet the humans pressed on with a relentless drive that no algorithm, no evolutionary perfection could predict or counter. In the heart of chaos, amid fire and shadow, humanity revealed its greatest weapon, not technology, not numbers, but the irrepressible, unpredictable spirit that had carried them from a fragile blue planet to the stars themselves.
The Nihilith flagship shuddered violently, its biometallic hull groaning under the concentrated fire of human fleets. Lyra Vance could feel the tremors through the deck, a pulse of danger that was almost alive. But the humans, driven by a combination of ingenuity, desperation, and unyielding courage, refused to falter. Fighter squadrons danced between the pulsating tendrils of the alien ships, weaving patterns no algorithm could predict, striking where least expected. Every pilot knew the odds were against them, yet the defiance in their eyes mirrored the spirit of a species that refused to be subdued. From the observation deck, Lyra watched as smaller human vessels, previously considered obsolete, executed maneuvers that defied conventional strategy.
Cargo freighters retrofitted with improvised weapons unleashed volleys of missiles, synchronized perfectly with swarm drones that jammed Nihilith sensors. Engineers had hacked together systems that allowed ships to anticipate enemy movements based on human intuition rather than computational prediction, creating a feedback loop of chaos the Nihilith could not decode. "Captain, we're receiving new transmissions from the outer colonies," Ree reported, voice tight with urgency. "They've mobilized. Thousands of ships, civilian and military, converging on the Andros expanse. They're coordinating themselves." Lyra's lips curved into a grim smile. "Exactly what we needed. Humans don't wait for orders. They create opportunities where none exist. Prepare to integrate them into the main fleet. Synchronize drones, artillery, and ship movements with their signals. Let's show them the real meaning of adaptability." Across the galaxy, the human signal spread like wildfire. Colonies that had long feared the Nihilith's wrath now became active participants in the war effort. Miners, engineers, scientists, and even farmers turned their knowledge and tools into weapons and strategic advantages. A former architect in the Solara Belt devised a series of defensive formations that used gravitational anomalies to trap Nihilith vessels, forcing them into kill zones where human ships awaited with concentrated fire. Civilians modified freighters into mobile command centers, capable of rerouting energy and coordinating strikes across vast distances. The galaxy watched in disbelief as humanity, underestimated for centuries, transformed panic into strategy, improvisation into art. Meanwhile, the Nihilith were learning, evolving at a terrifying pace. Their adaptations became faster, their hive-intelligence more sophisticated. Entire fleets began shifting strategies mid-battle, predicting human maneuvers with increasing accuracy. But humanity's strength lay not in predictability but in chaos. Human pilots improvised evasive maneuvers in ways no algorithm could calculate. Engineers sabotaged enemy control systems in real time, and strategists exploited weaknesses the creatures hadn't realized existed. Every loss taught the survivors something new. Every failure became a stepping stone to brilliance. Lyra issued a daring command: target the flagship's neural core directly. Use the pulse wave disruptors on all fronts simultaneously. It's time we hit where it hurts most. The signal rippled across the human fleet. Every ship, from the most advanced destroyer to the smallest converted freighter, aligned with the command, synchronizing their assault with impeccable timing. The pulse wave devices activated, sending a shock through the Nihilith neural network. For a moment, the collective intelligence hesitated, fractured, and the flagship's biometallic tendrils twitched erratically. Smaller Nihilith vessels collided, their formations unraveling under the sudden chaos. Humanity's ingenuity had exploited the one vulnerability the creatures hadn't anticipated: the unpredictable nature of human creativity. Even in the face of triumph, Lyra remained vigilant. The Nihilith were far from defeated. Their adaptive potential was immense. Yet humanity refused to yield. Across the void, fleets moved with almost uncanny coordination, pilots improvising new attack patterns mid-flight, engineers adapting weapons systems on the fly, and strategists coordinating multi-sector assaults in real time. Every loss was mourned, every victory celebrated, and every moment reinforced a single truth: humanity was a force that could not be underestimated. Reports came in from sectors previously thought lost. Entire planetary defense grids, long dormant, had been reactivated and enhanced with makeshift technology. Mining colonies deployed orbital cannons, their projectiles synchronized with human fleets to create devastating bombardments. Rogue scientists broadcast interference pulses that caused entire Nihilith squadrons to turn on each other. It was a symphony of unpredictability, an orchestration of chaos that no creature, no matter how advanced, could fully comprehend. Lyra's eyes scanned the battlefield again. The flagship, though damaged, was still a threat. Its tendrils writhed with intelligence, calculating, analyzing, adapting. But now it faced not just a fleet, but a species that had learned to turn every challenge into opportunity. The humans were relentless, fearless, and endlessly inventive. Every tactic the Nihilith tried was met with improvisation, every expectation shattered.
She gave another command: deploy the human hive coordination network. Every ship, every drone, every civilian vessel, linked together. Let them fight as one mind, unpredictable, adaptive, unstoppable. The network activated, and the human fleet surged with newfound cohesion. Fleets that had once operated in isolation now moved with an almost telepathic synchronization, anticipating threats before they appeared, exploiting weaknesses as they emerged, and striking with devastating efficiency. The Nihilith flagship convulsed under the assault, its neural systems overloaded by the combined ingenuity of countless humans acting in unison, yet independently. In the chaos, Lyra realized the truth. The war was far from over, but humanity had found its edge. It was not in superior technology or overwhelming force. It was in unpredictability, creativity, and the unbreakable will to survive. The galaxy had assumed that humans were insignificant, easily crushed by superior species. They had been wrong. Every pilot, engineer, and strategist understood the stakes. Every civilian turned soldier contributed to a growing storm of ingenuity and courage. The human spirit, underestimated and dismissed, had become the deadliest weapon the galaxy had ever seen. And as the flagship's defenses began to crumble under the relentless assault, Lyra knew that this war was no longer just about survival. It was about proving that humanity, against all odds, could rise, adapt, and triumph where no other species could.
The Nihilith flagship let out a soundless roar, its biometallic hull flaring with energy as it attempted to recalibrate. Its tendrils lashed out, sweeping through the debris of destroyed vessels, seeking to crush anything in their path. But humanity had evolved beyond expectation. Small squads of human fighters exploited every blind spot, darting through gaps no algorithm could anticipate, while drone swarms overloaded the flagship's neural network with conflicting signals. Every moment, humans adapted, learned, and struck again. Across the battlefield, colonies that had once hidden in fear were now active participants in the war. Engineers converted civilian mining drones into agile attack units, using them to harass and distract the Nihilith, while scientists deployed experimental weapons that manipulated gravity, creating deadly zones of entrapment. Former civilian freighters, retrofitted with makeshift railguns and energy pulse cannons, fired coordinated barrages that tore through the alien formations. Humanity's strength lay not in uniformity, but in ingenuity. Each unit unpredictable, each maneuver improvised, each soldier empowered to think beyond orders. Lyra's bridge hummed with controlled chaos. Screens displayed real-time telemetry, enemy movements, and fleet positioning, but the real battle was in intuition and improvisation. Pilots whispered strategies to each other mid-flight, engineers rigged weapons mid-combat, and commanders adjusted tactics dynamically. The Nihilith had evolved for millennia, but humans had evolved in the fires of survival, innovation, and unyielding courage. "Captain," Ree said, voice tense but excited, "the flagship is showing signs of structural compromise. Its neural core is unstable. If we push now, we could force a collapse across the entire fleet." Lyra's fingers danced across the console. "Do it. Prepare all remaining pulse wave disruptors. Synchronize fire with every ship in the human network. This is the moment humanity has been waiting for." The coordinated pulse swept through the battlefield like a tidal wave. Nihilith ships convulsed, their formations fracturing. The flagship writhed, tendrils flailing as internal energy systems overloaded. Smaller vessels collided, some imploding in bursts of bioenergy, others spiraling helplessly into the void. And yet, the humans pressed on, exploiting every opening, improvising every attack. From the edge of the Andros expanse, a lone civilian freighter-turned artillery platform fired a decisive volley, striking the flagship's neural core with pinpoint accuracy. The explosion rippled outward, severing connections across the Nihilith hive network. Ships slowed, disoriented, vulnerable. Humanity's improvisation had achieved the impossible. The deadliest creatures in the galaxy were staggered, faltering against a force they could not predict, a species they had dismissed. Lyra allowed herself a brief smile. She knew the flagship was not the end.
The Nihilith would adapt, evolve, and strike again. But humanity had shown its edge: unpredictability, ingenuity, and relentless courage. The galaxy would remember this battle not as a fight between equal forces, but as the moment humans proved their spirit could rival the deadliest intelligence in the cosmos. Across the battlefield, pilots cheered, engineers whooped in triumph, and colonies celebrated their newfound role in the galactic war. The message was clear: humanity was no longer a passive species to be dismissed. It was a force that could rise, adapt, and dominate even in the face of unimaginable threat. As Lyra gazed at the fractured, burning flagship, she knew the war had entered a new phase. The Nihilith were learning, but so was humanity, and the universe had yet to see the full scope of what humans could achieve when pushed to the edge. The battle was far from over, but one truth was undeniable: the galaxy had underestimated the human spirit at its peril.